Qori Broaster is a self-taught illustrator, graphic designer, and art director at Soze Agency, and this is her work. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being a guest.
Oh, thank you.
Let's get started because I'm curious of your move to Atlanta. That I read that you're from Brooklyn. You recently moved to Atlanta. How has that been? How's that been as a creative?
So I'm actually from Harlem, then moved to Brooklyn, and then moved to Atlanta. And it's a culture shock, I'll say the least. And by culture, it's not really a culture shock. It's more so just going to the South. Weather change, much slower environment here. But on the flip side, I will say there is a lot of creative energy and things like that. Probably much different than I've experienced in New York, because we do have a lot of that in New York. But I guess it's just more robust or more in your face here. People are actually talking to each other here in New York. People are all about their own thing and moving around their own pace. So I do appreciate that about that here. There's a lot of good energy as far as creativity and entrepreneurship and things like that.
Yeah, I've seen that you've had like some creative meetups, and I'm like, oh wow, I wish like that was happening in Brooklyn or something.
Right.
How do you find those? Like, how did that come about?
A lot of it is there'll be random invites from followers of mine or people in my community and things like that. I'm also a member at the Gathering Spot, which is it's a co-working space and community, and it's Black owned. A lot of people join. It's membership based platform where they have a lot of events, and there's physical spaces in Atlanta, LA, and DC. So people often come together and meet up. So I meet a lot of people through that, and they'll invite me to things as they host events. And it's just a lot of me randomly showing up places wherever I feel inclined to go.
I love it. It's Gathering Space? Is that what you said?
Gathering Spot.
The Gathering Spot. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah, so let's switch about your creativity. I want to hear about the agency. You're an art director and co-owner of this agency. I'd love to hear about your projects and how that's been.
Yeah, for sure. So I currently am at the Soze Agency, and it is a workers-owned co-op. We are a creative agency based in Brooklyn that creates large-scale social impact campaigns. All the campaigns are rooted in our values of authenticity, compassion, and equity. That shows up both in the structure of the company. I mentioned we're workers-owned co-op, so in that sense, anyone that's been at the company for 2 years or more is eligible to apply to become an owner, giving you more equity and more decision-making power within the company, basically working for something that's your own. And then also in the work that we do, we work in a range of social impact topics, from criminal legal reform to immigration justice, racial justice, environmental justice, so on. In that role, in that agency, I work on a lot of projects, a range of things, experiential campaigns, digital campaigns, things like that. My main role is usually art director. Sometimes I'm a designer on projects. Sometimes just kind of like having my eyes on it to advise and things like that. But I do enjoy that work mostly because it is like impactful work versus a lot of other things that I do.
Yeah, so you're juggling art direction and freelance illustrations and freelance other design jobs too.
Right, yeah. Yep. It's been, so when I first graduated from college, I was freelancing during, but afterwards I was freelancing, and I didn't want to let it go, because I don't know if I always attributed to being from New York, and there's no such thing as having one job. Like, everyone's always doing more than one thing. So I felt uncomfortable just going to this job and like, that's it. So when I did start the agency, I just continued freelancing, and on the back end, my freelancing just grew much bigger than I anticipated, and I started getting more and more clients and higher paying clients. And so at some point in time, it became like a 50-50 type of, like, almost having 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah. Did you go to school for design and art direction, or is this something later on that you
Yeah, so I went for art direction, which I went to Temple University in Philly, and they have a specific advertising program and then art direction concentration. I did not go for design. I didn't go to design school, which was my original plan. Temple's like the only non-art school I applied to, so it's funny that I even went there. But once I got there, I realized like there's so many options, like there's so many things I can do that I wanted to kind of do something similar to what I planned to go to school for, but apply some other kind of knowledge. So I went through the advertising lens, and that was really interesting to me. I did think I was going to do traditional ad agencies and things like that, which I'm not like opposed to. It just wasn't for me at the time when I graduated. I liked more boutique, just straight creative work, not necessarily for advertising. So I didn't necessarily go that route, but I did get a lot of the foundational knowledge that I have about everything I do from that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that now that you have this like design background too, of being self-taught, that really helps you with art direction. I know. I'm curious of what your definition of like art direction versus designer. Sometimes like they blend so often, and sometimes you don't really know the difference, but there is.
Yeah, I think for me, or for what I'm used to, or what I push anyway, is that the art director is the one that has the big ideas. Like you already know what the whole thing looks like. You know what the end destination is, basically. How to match that to the overall strategy or whatever your goals or success metrics are. You know how to make that thing happen visually or translate it visually, and then you are communicating to the designer to then execute those ideas that you had. So I think the designer has more of the technical input, literally determining what the final result looks like, but getting it out of the art director's brain is how I think.
That's actually a really good definition. I think I always struggle because I started as a designer and now I'm an art director, and like, I always just want to do both. And they're like, no, the designer's good.
Yeah, like, no, you don't do that part. They do that part.
Yes. So let's talk about some of your favorite projects. So I want to pull up this Parade to the Pole. So was that with your agency, or is this?
Yes. Parade to the Polls was through Soze. We had quite a large team on this project compared to other project teams that we have, but Parade to the Polls essentially is a civic engagement activation. It was a partnership between the NAACP, the Advancement Project, and the Leadership Conference for Civil and Human Rights. Those three orgs came together and basically popped up an activation in a handful of cities to encourage people. You know, on voting day, there are some circumstances that create longer lines, and people are not able to wait in those lines, and they're kind of not encouraged to get their vote counted that day for whatever reason. They can't stay in line. This was an activation to help to encourage them to stay in line and get their vote counted by doing things like having a celebratory parade type of feel, music, food, programming, activations, things like that, making sure people are comfortable in certain weather conditions, all those things. And what I like most about this project is that, one, it was one of the more celebratory projects. So in the nature of the work, it is social impact. So a lot of it is, we do things that are celebratory, but a lot of it is not as fun, not as loud, not as bold. And so I've enjoyed hearing that we're doing something that even has parade in the title, made me want to take it farther than other things that I've done. And so being able to incorporate things that were brighter and all these handwritten things and just something different. This also was a tight deadline with a lot of moving pieces, and I directed a remote team, and so this is my first time having so much going on in such a small amount of time, and then being able to see the end result was enjoyable for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful work, and it's funny that you're talking about deadlines, because that was my first thing, especially like agency life. Everything is fast paced. Yeah. I was like, I wonder what the deadline. I wonder how long
it was impossible. It was impossible. And it also is it's timely. Like there's a hard deadline because it's a civic engagement campaign. So voting day is this day. There's no pushing anything. Like this is just what it is. And so I think we probably had maybe 4 weeks from what I remember, I think it was like 4 weeks, something like that, from scratch, from literally zero to complete a full campaign. I mean, we had digital programming displayed on screens on trucks that were driving through these places. We had merch. We had all the things, basically. We're in this activation, and it's, to me today, it's incredible that it even happened and came out well. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm curious about like the brief, like, you know, all of those partners coming to you. Was it like I want you to do whatever, have full creative freedom, or they're like, we just want something bright or something eye catching? I'm curious what were like the brief like requirements that you guys had to.
I think a lot of our work is more, so we do obviously have briefs and things like that, but it's more collaborative. And so the very first thing we do is kind of explain the direction that we want to go in. But as far as the visual aspect itself, at the point of where I'm showing, especially in a timeline like this, at the point of where I'm showing this mood board and this is the idea I have, it's more so me selling that look and feel according to what their goals were. So you want to celebrate, you want, this is mainly for Black people. So I'm taking those things and saying like, this works because we're showing photography of Black people having fun and joyous environments or looking powerful. We're using these colors, these evoke these emotions, and yeah, things like that. So it wasn't, I guess this one in particular wasn't necessarily a full pitch in that way where I had to present multiple options and do all that. It was more so selling this one idea. Yeah.
I love it. And then, so you said you had to kind of curate a remote team, like of designers and illustrators. I'm curious about the process and what that was like.
Yes, so we are a small agency, so we work with contractors quite a bit. I actually, there's a lot of tapping into each other's networks to find contractors for whatever purpose. So this one, I was actually fortunate enough to work with a friend of mine who was also a designer, and she was the designer on this project, so she created all of these graphics themselves based on my direction. And then we also had a production designer that did more of the out of home pieces. But the team, I think it was just us three on design. I'm pretty sure, not 100%. I'm pretty sure it was just us three on design. But between the three of us, it was a lot. There was a lot of juggling because I typically have not worked with one person on production design and one person on digital. It's usually like the same person doing, so everything looks exactly the same. So having to get that structure in order to make sure there was like some unison amongst all of us was a thing and something I had struggled with at this time, but it ended up working out pretty well.
I love it. I mean, this is amazing. So what's your biggest, takeaway or proudest moment of this project?
I think my proudest moment or my biggest takeaway, I think what I learned the most out of this project is how to communicate my ideas best, because handing over that style guide was one thing, but being able to see it translated into what I actually thought it would be, what it would become, was something totally different. And of course, what I think it could become is one thing, and then what a designer would translate it as something else, and they could take it farther and make it better than what I imagined, and that's great, and I love that. And so being able to have that, the communication style or whatever to work with someone to get on the same page and create something that you both like, that's what I learned the most, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's huge. And like an art director who can kind of speak designer lingo is like really key too. Cause like you're saying, you can say one thing and a designer can take it and interpret it in an entirely different way. So it's very interesting. And so, I want to move to your passion projects. I love all of your work that you share on social.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Your Rapfirmations. I think that's such an awesome name. You know what I think about you too, and I'm like, she's such a good copywriter. I don't know if she knows.
Thank you so much. I've worked really hard. I used to hate, if you ask anyone that knows me, I used to hate writing anything, like from an Instagram caption to a paper to whatever. I just didn't want to write. And so I think like my disdain for writing turned into me figuring out how I can make it more enjoyable. And I just realized, like, just talk like how you normally talk. I was trying to sound too smart or something all the time. And so, like, me taking a step back, it's like, just be yourself. And now I just literally type what I would say, and it makes my writing great. So suddenly I'm good at it.
So do you have a favorite Rapfirmation, and like how often do you make these, and kind of what was the inspiration behind it?
Yes, so I'll start with the inspiration. I think, so I really do listen. I think I predominantly listen to rap music. More often than not, I'm pretty sure that's all I'm listening to. I know down here, when people get in my car and I'm driving around, people think like that's so New York. Like you only listen to like, it's not really like that. I just really think I love rap music in general, and not necessarily just because I'm from New York. But my mom used to work in marketing as well, and she used to work for MCA, which was a record label from whenever. I'm sorry if anyone watches this and they're older and that's something they're familiar with, but I don't remember much of it. But I remember there was a record label called MCA, and she worked for it, and she used to bring home like all the new music. She always had it all the time. And so we were the loud neighbors in our building. Everyone hated us. My mom would like turn the music all the way to the top level. We'd be in the house rapping together. Like that was just the environment that I grew up in. My parents were also, this is so random, my parents were also both like dancers for music artists. So they used to do like background dancing and music videos and stuff like that. It was just really, so everything, all of this is like, their music was a big deal, I guess, in my family. Yeah. And so when I like, a lot of my people listen to music to get into a zone or to feel good or whatever. So a lot of that would apply to me as well, but specifically in rap lyrics. I also am fully aware of the type of like stigma behind the lyrics and how it's a lot of violence and et cetera, et cetera. But on the flip side, to me, there's a lot of positive things in it as well. And so one day I just made it was meant to be like a random quote graphic, but I made about 5 of them, and I sent them to one of my friends, and they were, or a group chat, I think, and they were like laughing, like, this is so on brand for Qori to choose, because everyone's talking about affirmations now, but mine are literally all rap lyrics, so they're like, that's so on brand for Qori to have rap lyrics as affirmations. And I was like, it really is on brand, so let me, so every month I would share, there were always some that I had off the top of my mind. My favorite one was Jay-Z saying, put me anywhere on God's green earth, I'll triple my worth. I think that one was one of the first ones I did. And so on a monthly basis, as I listened to music, I would like catch affirmations for myself here and there, and I would just write them down and come back to them later. And then by the end of the month, I would have made a handful of these, and I would post them. At the top of the month, I did fall off. I talk a lot about my random consistency and then non-consistency. But I'm getting back into them now, and they're meant to be monthly, but things happen.
Of course. Consistency is a whole other topic. A whole struggle. Okay, let's move on to social media now too. I forget how I stumbled upon you on Instagram. I feel like one of your reels went viral. And I stumbled upon it, and then we had a couple of mutual friends. You went to a dinner with one of my friends in Atlanta too, and I was just like,
oh really?
Yeah, and I was like, oh wow, I love her style. I love I want to hear about your real journey and any tips you have, or more first, like let me just back up for a second. Let me think about what I'm trying to say. So your reels, you had a lot of success. I feel like the one that sticks out a lot is like a day in a life nobody asked for. I think that's so funny. When did you start doing that? Is that recent, or have you been doing that for a while?
So I did it, the very first time I did it was probably almost a year ago now, I think. I think it was last October, something like that. Yeah, I think last October I did one. And it was super random. Like I didn't know much about Reels. I wasn't on TikTok yet. I didn't know Reels were like the way to gain an audience on Instagram at the time. I wasn't really paying attention to social media like that at that time, but I knew that I was going to take my social media more seriously from that point. I just knew I had to keep posting and sharing more, because my whole focus is always on the freelancing. I always just want more clients or more like relationships with businesses. My whole thing is I work with the branding. I work with Black-owned businesses, so I want to be able to meet more people that own businesses and just have like those connections or whatever. And the way for me to do that was to put myself out there more. And my Instagram, it wasn't gonna be totally about my work because, and this is like no shade to anyone that does this, but I have a hard time making my Instagram look strictly portfolio because I still like want to show myself having fun. And I still want to connect with my friends the way I always have. And I feel like I would have that disconnect if I wasn't on my Instagram, but just my work was. And so I felt like having that balance would be showing me doing my work or what it looks like for me to get my work done and then show some of my work and like having that in between. And so one day I randomly was like, I'm just going to vlog my day and see. I have a busy day today. I have a lot to do. Let's see what happens. I vlogged it, and the voiceover idea was only because I edited the video and then I was like, it's missing something. So I'm just going to explain what's happening. And when I explained it, because I have a dry sense of humor and I'm like I just slide jokes in any statement I make. A lot of people liked it. And so I continued to do it. And I also did those once a month for some time. Now they're just here and there, but I did them once a month for some time, and I always started them off the same so that people knew what to expect as soon as the video started. And it ended up working out. It's probably my most commented on piece of content.
I love it. And your other ones too, I'm curious, like, so what's maybe like your top 3 tips or just advice in general for creatives who are like struggling of like, I don't know what to make. I think you already kind of gave advice, like show yourself a little bit too, maybe making it work. Do you have any other like real tips?
I think my number 1 tip is to offer either some kind of value or entertainment. Value, entertainment, yeah, I guess those are my top 2, because people will always share something that either they can resonate to, like it taught them something, or something that made them laugh. I think a lot of people, obviously, the a lot of people share because it's funny and relatable to a lot of people. But then I also have content where I'm sharing like tools and resources that I use, or like some advice for creatives. I'm always aiming to be super realistic, almost too realistic sometimes. And so that adds into the relatability portion of it. So definitely always try to think of an end goal and not just like posting just to post. I also think not being afraid to post. Everyone says this, but it's true. Like some of the stuff that I would edit or look at and be like, why am I would never want to see this. I don't want to see myself do this at all. I wouldn't like this, whatever. And I'll just post it anyway, and it'll be something that goes viral or whatever. So just not being afraid to post something, because you never, if you had the thought to make it, that means someone can relate to it or someone is going to enjoy it. Because there's going to be someone like you that's like, I wish I saw XYZ, and you thought to make it, so it works out. And then not getting caught up in numbers, of course, because some things flop, some things do great, it's whatever.
Yeah. I think that's great advice, especially like just post it. I think that's so hard though. It's so hard not to be like, but it could be better. It should be more polished. I should look this way.
I mean, there's always, it is your, like, no one's telling you that you can't post this or you can post this. Like, there's no one doing it but you. You're in control. It's your platform. And so who's to say that you can't, like, I might repost a reel that I did 2 years ago that I don't think got enough shine now because no one's telling me I can't. And I'm just going to post it. And some people might be like, all right, Qori, we already saw this, but I actually don't care.
Yeah. I think that's great. Great advice. Remember, it's your page. Do whatever the fuck you want.
Right, exactly.
That's so good. And you've also had like success where I see like partnerships with your posts or sponsored posts. And I've always been curious of like, wow, how do like what was that partnership like? And did you reach out to that brand and be like, hey, I have this awesome idea for a reel? Or did they come to you and like, hey, can you just make a reel? We'll love whatever you make.
Yeah, so the first time I did them, I think my very, very, very first one was for an ad. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember too much about that one. But I remember that the opportunity came across my inbox randomly. It was probably like a cold email, like it probably wasn't specifically for me, but I answered it anyway. And when I answered, I had already made my first day in the life video. So I used that as I often use existing content that I have to pitch brands or to show them like, look what I can do. So I already did the day in the life. I knew I could do that. And the app was for it was a platform. It was very similar to TikTok, but specifically for cooking and recipes. So when you watch someone's cooking video, you just click on the info and the full recipe of whatever they made would be there, ingredients, all that stuff. And so I was like, easily I could do a day in the life of me cooking and using this app or whatever. So that's what I did, or that's what I pitched them, and they accepted it and were like, yeah, we'll pay you this much. I don't remember. That one's probably my lowest rate ever. I don't remember how much it was, but that was my very first time. Fast forward a few months after I actually grew the Instagram, then things started just coming in to me. I'd say once I had around maybe like, I started this year with 3,000 followers, I think. So when it got maybe a couple thousand higher, brands started reaching out to me, and I would get a lot of brands in my email, and I'm like, I'm not sure if this is real or not, so I would like reach out to my other friends who are content creators and influencers and ask them like, so what do I do with this, and is this real, and am I supposed to respond to this, and things like that. After a while, I got more comfortable with it, and then one day I was like, I'm gonna pitch Notion because I use Notion every day. This is something that I know my audience would get a lot of value out of. They ask me all the time, how do I plan content? They ask me, how do I organize my projects? And the answer is always Notion. So I'm like, I want to make a piece of content for Notion. Now, before I decided to pitch, I'm not driven by money in any way, shape, or form. So I made a video about Notion and I posted it, and it did fairly well. So I then used that video to pitch Notion. I went and did my investigating. I found someone's email that I could email directly because I didn't want to go through any roundabout forms or anything like that. I sent an email saying like, I love this platform. I've been using it. I love this software. I've been using it for X amount of time. I think my audience of this many people would really enjoy this. My audience is made up of creators, entrepreneurs, blah, blah, blah. And here's a reel I already made about Notion. And as you can see in the comments, they loved it. It was a highly engaged video. So there were a lot of comments. Like you couldn't ignore that my audience actually liked the video. So they got back to me quickly and we made a deal very quickly. And it was a 3-video deal. And it was some 4 figures of money that was made from those 3 videos. And so from there, I just knew like that was my first time ever pitching. And I knew that once it worked out, I was like, oh, I can do this. I'm going to get some rejections, of course, but I'm like, oh, this is possible. You just ask. And they're like, okay, whatever. So
yeah, I love it. Cue celebratory graphics.
Yeah.
In post. That's amazing. And yeah, so you've had Notion, Logitech, and Trulies, which I thought was so awesome. I was like, damn, I drink Trulies. That's a great
That was definitely one of my favorites because I love Truly. They kept them coming. My friends would come here all the time and knew that they would open my fridge and be able to get a Truly out of this fridge. I still, to this day, I'm not actively in a contract with them, but because the relationship was so good, I still I'm going to drink the Trulies. I'm going to take a picture all the time, things like that. And it was just a real beneficial and easy relationship to have.
Yeah. And so I have a couple more questions about pitching too. Did you put a deck together, or was it you wrote an email and just added your videos and hit?
Yeah, so I guess traditionally I've done my research on this. I'm still new here, so I'm learning things as I go. But originally I did not make any kind of deck at all. I just wrote the email, and wherever I could link something, I would link it. So where I introduced myself, my name is Qori. My name was linked with my Instagram or whatever platform I was pitching for. where I mentioned a video, I would link the video, so on. So everything was just within the paragraph. And it was a short email. It wasn't anything. I don't read full emails, so I don't anticipate other people to read a full lengthy email. But as time went on, I did get requests, and everything is more so people asking me for things, and then I'm like forced to do it. So a brand did reach out to me and ask for a media kit, which in my head, I'm like, well, you're already reaching out to me, so I feel like, let's just get the conversation going. But I realized, like, all right, everyone else has a media kit and I don't. So I made a media kit from there. And my media kit is one single page with just like high level. I have this many followers on these platforms. This is my engagement rate. And these are the topics that I cover. And I also link some of like a range of my most popular pieces of content so that they can see like what I do. But yeah, I didn't have anything like super formal where like my branding work, I have full decks of all the work that I've done and descriptions and everything. I don't have anything like that for social media at all.
But that's good that's great to know. Like, it doesn't really have to be that complicated. Like, send the email, make some links, shoot your shot, see what happens.
Because they're going to look, these brands they have full positions. There are influencer marketing coordinators or whatever the title is. They're full-time people that work to look for people like you, like that's their whole job. And so you're kind of making it easier for them if you put yourself in their inbox. They're going to look, they're not going to ignore it because it's their job. They're going to look at your Instagram. They're going to look at your content, or your TikTok or whatever. So if it does align, and if you're able to, and even if it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't align exactly, but you're able to sell it so that it makes sense, then it makes sense. For me, like me working with Truly, I guess alcohol is a little different because as long as you're 21, it aligns. But for me, it was like, that's opposite. That's not necessarily what I post on my Instagram. I don't post about drinking that often or partying. Well, I do. I talk about it, but I don't like post visuals of it. It's a lot of like creativity and productivity and things like that. And so me making Truly fit into a lifestyle thing, or me making whatever brand, if someone came up to me and was talking about they wanted me to work for their sock brand and post a reel about that, I would have to make the socks work for what I do. It have to blend in seamlessly with my timeline. So if you're able to sell yourself, you're able to sell yourself as a brand or as an influencer in that way, then it's a lot easier for people to want to work with you.
I love it. That's all great tips. And okay, so last question about this I think it's really helpful to talk about, searching for the right email, and like, are you using LinkedIn to find these people and find their email, or what are your tips for finding that?
Yes. So I use LinkedIn, and I go on whatever company I'm trying to pitch, and I go through their people section, and whoever has influencer or something like that in their title, I will go to their profile. I'll make a note of their name. I'm also not afraid of people seeing that I looked at their profile. That's probably better. They just know that's where I got their email from. But I'll take a note. Right.
Yeah.
But sometimes a lot of people that work in influencer marketing, they'll put the email to contact them in their summary on LinkedIn because they know people are looking for a contact. Notion, whoever I reached out to at Notion, they had their email directly there. Some other people, I'll just take note of their name and go to hunter.io and put their name in, and it'll tell me what their email is. Put their name in their company, it'll tell me what their email is. And it's actually it wasn't as hard as I thought. I know a lot of people that directly DM people that they know work at whatever place, which I wouldn't do because I know DMs are like really easy to get lost, so I'm not sure I would do that. But you can always DM the actual company directly. I've done that before a couple times, and they respond often. I think every single time they responded. So.
Oh, that's a good tip. That's good to know.
And even if they don't have like any active campaigns or something like that, they might offer you an affiliate link or something adjacent to a paid campaign where you can start to build a relationship with them.
I love it. And what do you, I'm curious, like your email subject, or what's your beginning, or is this a tip you don't want to share?
No, I really don't. I share everything, but my the subject line is always potential partnership and then brand name, my name.
I love it. Thank you. I think that's great. I always have like those specific questions where I'm always like, I wonder what they did and what they wrote in that email headline.
Yeah, I would literally show my exact emails. It's not they're so simple. It's literally just like, this is me, this is my audience. They would like this, I like this. Let's work together. That's it.
I love it. I love it. Okay, just for me and you, I'm gonna pause for 2 seconds because I shut the AC off. So it wouldn't so the noise wouldn't go, and I'm just like see myself getting inside. I'm like hot, I need a sip of water. Hear about, have you ever dealt with imposter syndrome and kind of, what does that look like for you, and how do you talk yourself out of that, or how do you deal?
I definitely deal with imposter syndrome all the time, and I think a lot of that has to do with because my full-time job, when I joined this agency, because it's a smaller agency, your growth timeline is a lot shorter or quicker rather. So being able to get promotions or to like learn all these skills can happen much faster, because almost like you're forced to learn them because you're in a smaller environment, a smaller agency. So I'm often like, I'm at this position and able to like do these things at this point in my life I didn't think I would get to till years later. Am I ready for this? Am I able to do this? But I think just every time, it's really just a matter of telling yourself, they call this delusional now, and if that's delusional, so be it. But it's a matter of telling yourself that everything is going to work out regardless. Like, you don't have to, it's almost like that fake it till you make it mindset. Even if you don't think you know what you're doing, if you just tell yourself like, it's great, you're going to do it, it's going to end up coming out amazing, whatever, it kind of just happens. I mean, the power of the tongue, I guess, because I don't really know how I'm ever, one day I'll be like, I can't do this and crying and stuff. And the next day I'm like, oh, I'm killing it. Like, this is the best thing I ever did. No one's better than me. All those things. So I think it's really just more so me being delusional and telling myself like, you can do it. It's no big deal. But imposter syndrome is definitely something I experience. It's a cycle. It's all the time. I'm never going to be over it. I don't think. I think I'll probably encounter it for most of my life. But as long as I don't dwell in it, I don't really.
Yeah. I think we can all relate to that. I feel like imposter syndrome is such a just, like you're saying, a cycle, and we all deal with it. And it's like telling yourself those little things. Like, I know that quote, like, feel the fear and do it anyways. And I've realized, like, when it's different when I'm actually fearful, like when like I make something and I don't want to like post it, or I don't want to send it. And then when I say that quote, I'm like, oh, it's a little different when you're actually fearful and then you do it anyways. You're like, no, do it anyway. So I think that's great. So what's your proudest moment so far then?
My proudest moment so far.
Or something you want to congratulate yourself for,
I think this year, I tell my close friends a lot, this year was a huge year of transformation for me. I went from being I don't know if reserved is the word I want to use, so I don't think I was ever really reserved, but I definitely shared much less. I was more shy about my work. I was more insecure about my work. I didn't talk about work. Like, I just didn't do those things. And I had a complete 180 as of this year. Once I decided to, I told myself I'm going to do something, and I stuck to it, and I'm doing it, and I'm able to build this community and talk to people who are doing similar things as me, and meeting all these people and going to all these events. And I think that just being able to kind of rewire how I think about my work and as it relates to my life has been a big transformational experience for me. I think the people that are into astrology, I am not one of them, but a lot of them attribute it to my solar return. I don't know what that means really, but I'll say that whatever that is happening now, and I am very grateful for whatever's going on, because I did have a huge transformation, and I'm proud of myself for sticking through it. And as much as I wanted to there's been a couple of times where I completely shut down and I don't want to talk to anybody. I can't I can barely work. It was too much, but I'm happy for being able to like adjust and be able to do things like this. Last year, I probably wouldn't be sitting here interviewing with anyone because I'm just a shy person or whatever, but I'm happy that I was able to get out of that and go forward.
Yes, and I get to interview you, and I stumbled upon you, and I'm just like, it's amazing. Are you a Sagittarius? I'm curious. I think you
Yes.
are, right? I also am, and it's shocking that I think you're my third guest, or maybe 3 out of 4 have been Sagittarius, and that's like,
wow. There's a reason. There's a reason.
Yeah,
I just don't know it.
Best, way the best. No, everyone's. Okay, so, and I believe in speaking things into existence. So, what can we, and I would love to give you the space to, tell us what we can expect from you down the line, or tell us your biggest goal or dream.
I think my biggest goal and what you can expect is that I will be formalizing my freelancing. I've transitioned into a design studio model, and I have not formalized it. It's been all word of mouth. I have not been on the internet with a website or no social presence, anything like that. I am speaking into existence that sometime this year, and it's only a few months left. So sometime this year, I will be online and public with this business that I run, and I will have a lot of clients, a lot of Black-owned businesses I'll get the opportunity to work with and support and get resources to, and that is what you can expect from me.
I love it. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see the launch.
Me too.
Well, I want to thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for inspiring women. Thank you for sharing your gifts. Thank you for sharing your joy.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming through, and putting yourself out there and inspiring everybody to just be yourself and create work.
Thank you so much. I'm actually thankful for everyone else for making me comfortable to do that.